Hyunwoo Kim stood in the small transport ship and looked out at the massive space station ahead. The Galactic Council's main building was bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in space like a giant crystal, with thousands of lights blinking. On its surface, ships from all over the galaxy came and went like busy insects around a hive. "First time seeing it?" asked Taemin Park, the military advisor who sat across from him. Taemin had short black hair and wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's symbol on the chest. "Yes," Hyunwoo said. "The pictures don't show how big it really is." Bo-Ra Lee looked up from her tablet. She was the team's scientist, a woman with quick eyes and steady hands. "The station is home to over 2 million beings from 47 different worlds," she said. "Some of them breathe different air than us. Some don't breathe air at all." Jinna Choi, their trade expert, laughed softly. "And we're supposed to make a good impression on all of them," she said. "No pressure at all." Hyunwoo smiled, but his stomach felt tight. He was Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Everything he did today would shape how the galaxy saw humanity for years to come. The weight of representing 8 billion people pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy coat. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. A voice spoke in perfect English through the speakers. "Welcome, Earth delegation. Please follow the blue lights to the council chamber." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of some kind of clear material that showed the stars outside. Alien beings walked past them, some tall and thin like walking trees, others short and round like living rocks. A few floated in the air without touching the ground. Most ignored the humans completely, but Hyunwoo noticed some staring with curious eyes. "Stay calm," he told his team quietly. "Remember, we're here as equals." The council chamber was even more amazing than the station outside. The room was shaped like a huge bowl, with seats going up in circles toward the ceiling. In the center stood a tall crystal podium that glowed with soft light. Hundreds of alien beings filled the seats, talking in languages that sounded like music growling or strange clicks and whistles. A tall being with purple skin and 4 arms stood at the podium. This was Chancellor Velthari of the Nexari Empire. His voice boomed through the chamber when he spoke. "Beings of the Council," he said, "today we welcome a new species to our great alliance. The humans of Earth have traveled far to join us." Polite sounds came from the audience, some clapping, some making musical notes, others tapping their feet or claws. Hyunwoo and his team walked down to 4 empty seats near the front. He felt like an actor on a stage with thousands of people watching. "Chancellor," Velthari continued speaking, "for 12,000 years, the Galactic Council has brought peace and order to this part of the galaxy. We have prevented wars, shared knowledge, and helped young species grow into full members of galactic society." The Chancellor looked directly at Hyunwoo. His eyes were completely black, like deep space. "Humanity is still very young," he said. "You have only been traveling between stars for 200 years. Most council members had already built great empires before your species learned to make fire." Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Hyunwoo kept his face calm, but Taemin's hand moved closer to his weapon. Bo-Ra wrote notes on her tablet without looking up. "Because of your youth," the Chancellor went on, "the Council has created special terms for your membership. These will help you learn and grow under our wise guidance." A holographic document appeared in the air above the podium. The writing was in dozens of different languages, including English. Hyunwoo read quickly, his trained diplomat's eye catching the important parts. "First," Chancellor Velthari said, "humanity will receive junior membership status. You may speak in council meetings, but you cannot vote on important matters until you prove your wisdom." The hologram highlighted certain sections as he spoke. "Second, you may colonize 12 star systems that the Council has chosen for you. These systems will provide everything your people need to grow and prosper." Hyunwoo noticed that all 12 systems were far from any major trade routes. They were isolated with few valuable resources, good enough to keep humanity alive, but not good enough to make them rich or powerful. Third, the Chancellor continued, humanity will contribute 60% of your military forces to the Council Defense Fleet. This will give your warriors valuable experience while helping protect all Council worlds. Jinnah made a small sound of surprise. 60% was much higher than normal. Most species contributed 20% or less. Hyunwoo made a mental note to ask why humanity was different. Fourth, all human technology must be shared with the Council Science Division for review and approval. This ensures that dangerous discoveries do not threaten galactic peace. Bo-Ra stopped writing and looked up sharply. As a scientist, she knew this meant humanity could never develop anything advanced without the Council's permission. They would always be behind, always dependent. Finally, Chancellor Velthari said, humanity will pay annual membership fees equal to 15% of your total economic output. These fees support Council operations and help fund aid to less fortunate species. The hologram showed a summary of all the terms. Hyunwoo read it again, then a third time. His years of diplomatic training helped him understand what he was really looking at. This wasn't membership. It was servitude wrapped in fancy words. These terms are generous, the Chancellor said. No other species has received such extensive support when joining the Council. We expect humanity to be grateful for this opportunity. The alien audience made approving sounds. Many nodded their heads or moved their bodies in ways that probably meant agreement. They thought the Council was being very kind to the primitive humans. Chancellor Velthari gestured toward Hyunwoo. Ambassador Kim, you may now speak for your species. Do you accept these terms of membership? The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the small group of humans. Hyunwoo stood slowly, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. His next words would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. He looked at his team. Tae-min gave him a tiny nod. Bo-Ra's face was serious, but determined. Jinnah looked worried, but ready to support whatever he decided. Hyunwoo turned, back to face the Chancellor and the watching crowd. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the huge chamber. Chancellor Velthari, honored members of the Council, he began, humanity is grateful for your invitation to join this great alliance. We have traveled far and learned much just by being here today. He paused, choosing his words carefully. However, such an important decision requires careful consideration. I request permission to study these terms in detail and consult with my government on Earth before giving our final answer. A murmur went through the audience. This was not the immediate acceptance they expected. Some aliens looked confused. Others seemed annoyed. Chancellor Velthari's four arms moved in what might have been surprise or anger. Ambassador Kim, he said, these terms are standard for all new members. There is nothing to study or reconsider. I understand, Hyunwoo replied politely. But humanity has learned that important agreements deserve careful thought. We would not want to make promises we cannot keep. The Chancellor stared at him for a long moment. Very well, he finally said. You have 30 days to make your decision. But understand this, the Council's generosity has limits. These terms will not be offered again. Thank you for your patience, Hyunwoo said with a respectful bow. As the human delegation left the chamber, alien voices rose in discussion behind them. Some sounded confused, others angry. A few seemed almost impressed that the young species had dared to ask for time to think. Walking back through the corridors, Jinnah whispered, "Did we just make the biggest mistake in human history?" "Maybe," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Or maybe we just saved ourselves from making an even bigger one." Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, unaware that they had just encountered something they had never seen before, a species with the courage to say, "not yet," to power. 3 months had passed since Hyunwoo Kim and his team returned to Earth with the Galactic Council's agreement. In those 3 months, something happened that no one in the galaxy expected. The humans actually read every single word of the contract. Da-hee. Yoon sat in her office on Earth, surrounded by stacks of papers and dozens of computer screens. As the new trade commissioner, she had spent weeks studying galactic commerce laws. What she found made her angry enough to throw her coffee cup at the wall. "This is impossible," she said to her assistant. "According to their own rules, they can't ask us to give up 70% of our mining rights. The maximum legal limit is 45%. She pulled up another document on her screen. "And look at this. The trade route access fees they want to charge us? They're 3 times higher than what the Karathi pay, and the Karathi have been council members for 50 years. Da-hee had always been good with numbers. Even as a child, she could spot when someone was trying to cheat her out of her allowance. Now, using that same skill on galactic trade laws, she saw cheating on a scale that shocked her. Her assistant, a young man named Woo Seok, looked over her shoulder at the screen. "Are you sure about this? Maybe humans just don't understand how galactic commerce works." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Da-hee said. "The question is whether they think we're too stupid to notice or if they just don't care." Meanwhile, in the military headquarters in Seoul, Woo Jin Nam was having his own problems with the council's agreement. As the human military liaison, he was supposed to work out the details of humanity's contribution to the council defense fleet. 60%, he said to General Park, shaking his head. "They want 60% of our entire military." General Park was an old soldier with gray hair and scars from Earth's last war. He looked at the holographic display showing ship deployments across council space. "What do other species contribute?" "The average is 18%, Woo Jin replied. "The highest I can find is 25%, and that's from a species that the council helped rebuild after a civil war." "So why do they want so much from us?" Woo Jin highlighted different sections of the military agreement on his screen. "Look at where they want to station our ships. All of them are on the outer edge of council space, far from Earth. And look, at the command structure, human officers can't give orders to alien troops, but alien officers can command human soldiers." General Park studied the display for a long time. "They're not asking for military cooperation," he said finally. "They're asking for hostages." "That's what I think too," Woo Jin agreed. "If humanity ever disagrees with the council, they'll have most of our fleet under their control." But it was So Young Kang who made the discovery that changed everything. As the human legal attaché, she had been given access to the council's legal database. She was supposed to use it to learn galactic law and help humanity follow council rules. Instead, she found something that made her blood run cold. So Young had always loved puzzles. As a child, she would spend hours putting together 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles. In law school, she treated complex legal cases the same way, finding the pieces that didn't fit and figuring out why. The council legal database was like the biggest puzzle she had ever seen. Thousands of years of laws, agreements, and court decisions. Most species spent decades just learning the basics. So Young approached it differently. She used computer programs to search for patterns. "Computer," she said to her AI assistant, "show me all agreements for junior membership status in the last 1,000 years." The screen filled with hundreds of documents. So Young told the computer to highlight common terms and conditions. What she saw made her sit down hard in her chair. Every single junior member agreement was almost identical to humanity's. The same. 60% military contribution. The same technology sharing requirements. The same high membership fees. Even the same isolated colony systems. Computer, cross-reference these agreements with current council membership status. New information appeared on the screen. So Young stared at it in disbelief. Computer, are you sure this is correct? Show me the verification data. The computer confirmed what the screen showed. Of the 37 species that had signed junior membership agreements in the last 1,000 years, only 8 had ever been promoted to full membership. The other 29 were still junior members, some after hundreds of years. So Young dug deeper. She found that junior members paid 80% of all council fees, but only controlled 15% of council votes. They provided 70% of all military forces, but their officers held less than 10% of command positions. The pattern was clear. Junior membership wasn't a stepping stone to full membership. It was a trap. Computer, show me economics. Data for junior member species over time. The results were even worse. Junior member species remained poor compared to the founding council races. Their technology advanced slowly because they had to share all discoveries. Their military forces were constantly deployed far from home, unable to protect their own interests. So Young printed out thousands of pages of evidence. She organized it all into a clear, logical report that any human diplomat could understand. Then she sent copies to Da-hee, Wu Jin, and directly to Ambassador Kim. When the 3 reports reached Earth's government, they caused an emergency meeting of the Global Council. President Martinez called in experts from every field: military, economic, legal, and scientific. Let me make sure I understand this, President Martinez said, looking around the table at the gathered experts. The Galactic Council isn't offering us membership, they're offering us slavery. That's a harsh way to put it, said the Secretary of State. But yes, essentially correct. Ambassador Kim, who had returned to Earth for consultations, spread the 3 reports across the table. Da-hee found 847 legal violations in their trade terms. Wu Jin discovered that our military contribution would be 3 times higher than any other species in history. And So Young proved that junior membership is designed to keep species weak and dependent. How long has this been going on? Asked the Defense Secretary. According to So Young's research, at least 1,000 years, Kim replied. Probably longer. The Galactic Council isn't an alliance of equal partners. It's an empire that pretends to be a democracy. President Martinez leaned back in her chair. So what are our options? We could accept the agreement anyway, suggested the Secretary of Commerce. Even with the unfair terms, we'd still gain access to galactic technology and trade networks. At the cost of our freedom, Kim replied. And based on the historical data, we'd never be able to change the terms later. Once you're a junior member, you stay a junior member. We could try to negotiate better terms, offered the Secretary of State. I don't think they'll negotiate, Kim said. Chancellor Velthari made it clear that these terms are final. Take it or leave it. Then we leave it, said the Defense Secretary. We've survived as an independent species for thousands of years. We can keep doing it. But we'd be isolated, the Commerce Secretary protested. Cut off from galactic civilization. President Martinez looked at each person around the table. I want everyone to think very carefully about this decision. We're not just choosing for ourselves. We're choosing for every human who will ever live. Do we want to be free but alone, or protected but controlled? The room fell silent as everyone considered the weight of that choice. Outside the window, the lights of the city sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere up in space, human ships patrolled the solar system, keeping watch for threats. On Earth, 8 billion people went about their daily lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. Ambassador Kim thought about his time on the council station. He remembered the way the aliens had looked at humanity, not as equals, but as children who needed guidance. He thought about Chancellor Velthari's condescending tone and the way the entire council seemed to assume that humans would be grateful for whatever scraps they were offered. Mr. President, he said finally, I have a recommendation. Everyone turned to look at him. I think we should do something that no species has ever done before, Kim said. I think we should say no. The room erupted in discussion. Some people argued for accepting the deal, others for trying to negotiate. But Ambassador Kim sat quietly, thinking about a fourth option that none of them had considered yet. What if humanity didn't just say no to the Council's terms? What if they said no to the Council entirely? It was a dangerous idea, a radical idea. But as Kim looked at the evidence spread across the table, evidence of 1,000 years of exploitation disguised as generosity, he began to think it might also be the right idea. Outside, the stars shone down on Earth, waiting to see what humanity would choose. 6 months after the first meeting, a new ship approached the Galactic Council station. This time, the human delegation was different. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim had been replaced by Jae-hwan Lim, a man with quiet eyes and a reputation for never backing down from a fight. Jae-hwan had spent his career solving impossible problems. As a young lawyer, he had taken on corrupt corporations and won. As a diplomat, he had ended wars that everyone said would last forever. Now, at 55 years old, he was about to take on the biggest challenge of his life. Standing beside him in the transport ship were 3 other humans. Minho Seo was a researcher who had spent the last 6 months studying every piece of council history he could find. So Young Kang had returned as their legal expert, carrying a briefcase full of documents that would shock the galaxy. And Young Mi Han, an economist whose computer models had predicted 3 market crashes, was ready to show the council something they had never seen before. "Are you nervous?" Minho asked as they docked with the station. "Terrified," Jae-hwan admitted, "but sometimes you have to be scared and do the right thing anyway." The council chamber looked exactly the same as before, but the atmosphere was different. Word had spread that the humans were returning with their answer. Some aliens seemed curious, others annoyed. A few looked worried, though they probably didn't know why. Chancellor Velthari stood at the crystal podium, his 4 purple arms crossed in what might have been impatience. "Ambassador Lim," he said, "we have been waiting for your response to our generous offer. I trust humanity has come to its senses." Jae-hwan walked to the center of the chamber, carrying a simple folder. The alien audience leaned forward to hear what he would say. "Chancellor Velthari, honored members of the council," Jae-hwan began, "humanity has indeed reached a decision. But first, we would like to present our research findings." The Chancellor's black eyes narrowed. "Research findings? The terms of membership are not a research project, Ambassador. They are a gift to your species." "With respect," Jae-hwan replied, "we believe the Council would benefit from hearing what we discovered." He gestured to Minho, who stepped forward with a portable holographic projector. The device activated, filling the air above the chamber with charts and graphs. "Over the past 6 months," Minho said, "we have analyzed every council decision for the last 1,000 years. We found some interesting patterns." The hologram showed a timeline of council membership. In the year 2847, the Karathi Syndicate joined as junior members. Today, 178 years later, they are still junior members. The Zalani Republic joined in 2654. They are still junior members after 371 years. Murmurs went through the audience. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Minho continued. "In fact, of the 37 species that have joined as junior members in the last millennium, only 8 have ever been promoted to full membership. The average time spent in junior status is 312 years. The longest is 847 years. Chancellor Velthari interrupted. "These species simply have not yet proven their readiness for full membership. The Council must be careful about granting voting rights." "Interesting theory," So Young said, standing up. "Let's test it with economic data." The hologram changed to show trade statistics. Junior member species contribute 78% of all council membership fees, but control only 12% of council votes. They provide 71% of military forces, but hold 8% of command positions. They discover new technologies at the same rate as full members, but are required to share all innovations while receiving nothing in return. The chamber fell silent. These numbers had never been presented together before. Even some of the full council members looked surprised. Young Mai stepped forward. We ran economic projections based on these patterns. If current trends continue, junior member species will become progressively poorer relative to full members. The wealth gap will grow until it becomes impossible for any junior member to develop enough resources to qualify for promotion. This is nonsense, Chancellor Velthari said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. The council has always acted in the best interests of all members. Jay Huan opened his folder and pulled out a thick document. That brings us to our main concern, he said. The agreement you offered humanity contains 847 violations of the Council's own charter. Gasps came from the audience. Several aliens began talking at once. Impossible! The Chancellor shouted. The Council's legal department reviewed those terms personally. So Young activated her tablet, and the hologram changed again. Article 15 of the Council Charter states that no member species may be required to contribute more than 30% of their military forces. The human agreement requires 60%. Article 23 guarantees equal access to trade routes for all members. The human agreement restricts us to secondary routes with higher fees. She continued reading violations from her list. With each one, the noise from the audience grew louder. Some aliens looked angry, others confused. A few seemed embarrassed. Article 47 prohibits discrimination based on species age or technological development. The human agreement explicitly creates different rules for young species. Article 52 requires that all membership fees be proportional to economic capacity. The human agreement charges us 3 times the standard rate. Young Mai added, we also found evidence of market manipulation. Council trade policies artificially inflate prices for goods produced by junior members while protecting markets for full member products. This creates a system where junior members can never accumulate enough wealth to gain political influence. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens argued with each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded explanations from the council leadership. Others called for immediate investigations. Chancellor Velthari slammed his fist on the podium. Enough! These accusations are outrageous. Humanity clearly does not understand the complexities of galactic governance. Actually, Jay Huan said calmly, we understand them very well. That's why we've prepared an alternative. The chaos stopped, as if someone had turned off a switch. Every eye in the chamber focused on the human ambassador. Jay Huan pulled out a second document, this one bound in blue covers. Humanity proposes a revised membership agreement based on the Council's own charter and the principles of equal representation. The hologram changed to show the new proposal. Even from a distance, everyone could see it was completely different from the original. First, Jay Huan said, humanity requests full membership status from day one. All species that meet the basic requirements for galactic citizenship should be treated as equals. Preposterous, Chancellor Velthari interrupted. Second, military contributions will be limited to 20% of total forces, with command positions distributed proportionally among all members. Third, technology sharing will be mutual. All species share equally. All species benefit equally. Young Mai continued the presentation. Fourth, membership fees will be calculated using a fair formula based on actual economic capacity. Fifth, trade access will be equal for all members with no discriminatory pricing or route restrictions. The final point came from So Young. Sixth, we propose a complete restructuring of the Council's governance system. Full members and junior members will be abolished. All species will have voting power proportional to their population and economic contribution. The silence that followed was deafening. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council had operated on the principle that older, more established species should guide younger ones. The humans had just proposed to tear down that entire system. Chancellor Velthari's voice shook with rage. "This is impossible! The Council has maintained galactic peace for millennia. You cannot simply rewrite the fundamental structure of our civilization." "Why not?" Jae-Hwan asked simply. "If the current structure is based on principles that violate your own charter, isn't it time for a change?" "The answer is no!" the Chancellor shouted. "These terms are ridiculous. No civilized species would make such demands." "I see," Jae-Hwan said. He closed the folder and looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. "In that case, we have a third option to discuss." The Chancellor paused. "Third option?" "Yes," Jae-Hwan replied. "If the Council cannot accept fair membership terms and humanity cannot accept unfair ones, then perhaps it's time to consider whether we need membership at all." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. No species had ever suggested rejecting Council membership entirely. It was unthinkable, impossible, absurd. "You would reject the protection of the Council?" Chancellor Velthari asked in disbelief. "You would choose isolation over cooperation?" "We would choose freedom over subjugation," Jae-Hwan replied. "Humanity has existed independently for thousands of years. We've survived wars, plagues, natural disasters, and our own mistakes. We've explored space, built civilizations, and created art and science that we're proud of. We did all of this without the Council's help." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Why should we give up our independence for an agreement that benefits everyone except us?" Young Mi stepped forward. "Our economic analysis shows that the resources humanity would contribute to the Council over the next century exceed the value of what we would receive by a factor of 12. 7. We can achieve better outcomes independently." Minho added, "Our historical research indicates that isolated human colonies have." The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. For 5 full minutes after the humans left, not a single being made a sound. Chancellor Velthari stood at the podium, his 4 purple arms hanging at his sides, staring at the door where the human delegation had disappeared. Finally, Councillor Zethra of the Hegemony broke the silence. "Did they just reject us?" "They threatened to reject us," corrected Councillor Morden of the Trade Federation. "No species has ever actually done it. They'll be back within a week, begging for any terms we offer." But Chancellor Velthari wasn't so sure. He had been negotiating with alien species for over 2 centuries. He knew desperation when he saw it, and he knew confidence. The humans had shown no desperation at all. 3 days later, his worst fears were confirmed. The message arrived through normal diplomatic channels addressed to the full Council. It was short, simple, and absolutely devastating. "To the Galactic Council," it read, "after careful consideration, humanity formally withdraws from all negotiations regarding Council membership. Effective immediately, we renounce any claim to Council protection, support, or territorial guarantees. We thank you for your time and wish you well in your future endeavors. Signed, Jae-Hwan Lim, Ambassador for Earth." Chancellor Velthari read the message 3 times before he believed it. Then he called an emergency session of the Council leadership. "This is impossible," said Councillor Reshak of the Military Command. "No species rejects Council membership. It's economic suicide, military impossibility, cultural isolation." "Apparently," Chancellor Velthari said grimly, "no one told the humans that." On Earth, the decision had not been easy. President Martinez had called for a global referendum, the first in human history. For 6 weeks, every person on Earth and in the colonies had debated the question: should humanity join the Galactic? Council, under their terms, negotiate further or go it alone. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 42% wanted to keep trying to negotiate with the Council. 31% wanted to accept the original terms, believing that any galactic membership was better than none. But 27% voted for the third option: complete independence. In most democracies, 27% would have lost. But the global constitution required a two-thirds majority for any decision that would permanently bind humanity to outside authority. The pro-council votes fell short. Jae-Hwan Lim had announced the decision from the steps of the Global Assembly in Geneva. Billions of people watched as he read the simple statement that would change human history. "The people of Earth have spoken," he said. "We choose freedom." Now, 1 week after sending the message to the Council, Earth's leadership was dealing with the consequences. The first challenge came from an unexpected source: other humans. "You've doomed us all," shouted Director Chen Wei of the Mars Mining Consortium during an emergency video conference. "Without Council protection, how will we defend our colonies? Without Council trade networks, how will we get the resources we need?" Similar complaints came from colony governors across human space. New Singapore Station reported problems with alien traders who were suddenly unwilling to do business. The research station at Proxima Centauri worried about losing access to Council scientific databases. But Dong-Hyun Cho, Earth's new military coordinator, had different concerns. "Sir," he said to President Martinez during a private briefing, "we're getting reports of unusual ship movements near our borders. Council vessels are positioning themselves around human space." "Are they planning to attack?" the president asked. "I don't think so," Dong-Hyun replied, "but they're definitely watching us very carefully. It's like they expect us to fail and come crawling back." "Will we fail?" President Martinez asked bluntly. Dong-Hyun considered the question seriously. He was a career military officer who had spent 30 years planning for threats both human and alien. "Militarily, we can defend ourselves. Our fleet is smaller than the Council's, but our technology is different. We've developed things they haven't seen because we weren't required to share everything." He pulled up a holographic display showing the human defense network. "Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than most Council designs. Our artificial intelligence systems are more advanced, and we have one advantage they can't match. We're all fighting for the same thing." "Which is?" "Our freedom," Dong-Hyun said simply. "Council species fight because they're ordered to. Humans fight because we choose to." Meanwhile, young Mi-Han was working on the economic challenges. Her team had set up a crisis management center in Seoul, monitoring trade flows and resource allocation across human space. "The short-term outlook is difficult," she admitted during a briefing to the Global Assembly. "We're losing access to about 30% of our traditional trade partners. Some alien species are afraid to deal with us because the Council might punish them." She switched to a different screen showing production figures. "But we're also discovering opportunities we never knew existed. Without Council regulations, our industrial output has increased by 15% in just 1 week. Apparently, we were spending a lot of time and energy complying with rules designed to slow us down." Young Mi had always been good at finding patterns in complex data. What she was seeing now excited her more than anything in her career. "The Council trade network is huge," she explained, "but it's also inefficient. It's designed to benefit the founding species at everyone else's expense. Without those restrictions, we can trade directly with species who want what we produce." She highlighted several star systems on the galactic map. "These 12 systems have contacted us privately about trade agreements. They're all junior Council. Members who are tired of paying inflated prices for goods they could get cheaper from us." The most interesting reports came from So-Young Kang, who had set up a legal monitoring office to track Council reactions to humanity's withdrawal. "They're panicking," she said with satisfaction. "Not publicly, but the private communications we're intercepting show real concern at the highest levels." So-Young had always enjoyed intellectual puzzles, and the Council's reaction was like a complex legal case with new evidence appearing every day. 3 junior member species have formally requested copies of our legal analysis," she reported. "The Karathi Syndicate is asking pointed questions about why their membership fees are so high. The Zelani Republic has hired independent lawyers to review their agreement. She pulled up intercepted communications on her screen. Most telling of all, the Council has quietly started reviewing all junior member agreements. They're looking for ways to make small changes that might prevent other species from following our example. Are they succeeding? President Martinez asked. No, So Young replied with a smile. Because they can't fix the fundamental problem. The entire council system is built on inequality. Any real reform would threaten the power of the founding species. The most dramatic evidence of the council's concern came 2 weeks after humanity's withdrawal. Chancellor Velthari himself requested a private meeting with Ambassador Lim. They met on a neutral space station in unclaimed territory. Jae-Hwan arrived with a small escort, while the Chancellor brought a full diplomatic entourage. Ambassador Lim, Chancellor Velthari began, I believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the Council's membership offer. I don't think so, Jae-Hwan replied calmly. Your terms were quite clear. Perhaps we could discuss. Modifications to the agreement. The Council values humanity's unique perspective and would hate to lose the opportunity for cooperation. Jae-Hwan studied the Chancellor's face. The alien was trying to appear confident, but his body language showed stress. What kind of modifications? Well, the Chancellor said carefully, perhaps the military contribution could be reduced to 45%. And the membership fees might be adjusted based on economic capacity rather than fixed percentages. And the technology sharing requirements? Those might also be reviewed. Jae-Hwan leaned back in his chair. Chancellor, you're offering to reduce the terms from completely unacceptable to merely very unfair. That's not the kind of progress we're looking for. What would you consider acceptable? The Chancellor asked desperately. The terms we presented to the Council 3 weeks ago, Jae-Hwan replied. Full equality from day one, no junior membership status, no discriminatory fees or contributions. Complete reform of the Council governance structure. Chancellor Velthari's 4 arms crossed in front of his chest. That's impossible. The Council has operated successfully for 12,000 years. We cannot simply abandon our entire system of government because one species makes demands. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Jae-Hwan said, standing up to leave. Wait, the Chancellor called out. You don't understand the consequences of isolation. Without Council protection, other species will see you as easy targets. Without our trade networks, your economy will collapse. Without our knowledge databases, your technology will stagnate. Jae-Hwan paused at the door. Chancellor, let me ask you something. How many wars has the Council prevented in the last 1,000 years? Dozens, the Chancellor replied proudly. The Council has maintained galactic peace through strength and wisdom. How many of those wars were between Council members and non-Council species? The Chancellor hesitated. Well, most of. 2 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was beginning to change in ways no one had expected. Heijin Ryu stood in the observation deck of Earth's new orbital defense station, watching ships come and go in the busy traffic lanes around the planet. As head of human external affairs, she had one of the most interesting jobs in the galaxy, monitoring how other species reacted to humanity's bold experiment in independence. What she saw through her office window would have shocked the Galactic Council. Instead of the isolated, struggling colonies they expected, human space was busier than ever. Ships from a dozen different species regularly visited human stations, bringing goods and taking away human products. Ma'am, her assistant called from across the room, we're getting another private communication from the Karathi Syndicate. They want to discuss expanded trade relations. Heijin smiled. The Karathi were the 3rd species this month to approach humanity about closer cooperation. As a junior council member for over 150 years, they were tired of paying high fees for goods they could get cheaper from human traders. Schedule a meeting for next week, she said, and make sure to invite Subin. She'll want to hear what they have to say. Su Binjiang had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to the growing number of species that were questioning their relationship with the Council. As Director of Interspecies Relations, she spent most of her time listening to complaints from aliens who were starting to wonder why they needed the Council's permission to trade with humans. The pattern was always the same. First, a species would send exploratory messages about possible cooperation. Then, quiet meetings on neutral stations. Finally, formal trade agreements that carefully avoided violating Council regulations while still giving both sides what they wanted. "We're not trying to undermine the Council," Su Bin would always say during these meetings. "We're just offering alternatives." But everyone knew the truth. Every successful trade deal with humanity proved that the Council's complex regulations weren't necessary. Every technological innovation shared freely between humans and other species showed that progress didn't require bureaucratic oversight. The most dramatic changes were happening in human space itself. Without Council restrictions, human scientists and engineers were making breakthroughs at an incredible pace. Dr. Kyung-Soo Ahn had established the new Center for Xenosociological Studies on Luna Base. His research team was making discoveries that were revolutionizing how humans understood alien cultures. More importantly, they were sharing their findings freely with any species that asked. "The Council has been wrong about almost everything," Kyung-Soo explained during a video conference with colony governors. "They assume that all species develop the same way, think the same way, want the same things. But our research shows incredible diversity in how different aliens approach problems." He pulled up charts showing cultural analysis data from 37 different species. The Karathi, for example, make decisions collectively, but not through voting like humans do. They use a complex harmony system that takes into account emotional resonance. The Council has been trying to force them to use standard democratic procedures for over a century. "What does that mean for us?" asked Governor Walsh from the Titan colony. "It means we can work with them in ways the Council never could," Kyung-Soo replied. "We don't assume our way is the only right way. We adapt." This philosophy of adaptation and cooperation was spreading throughout human space. Engineers on Mars had developed new manufacturing techniques by combining human technology with Zelani crystal growing methods. Farmers on Europa were using Vraxian biotechnology to create crops that could grow in low-light conditions. Most importantly, humans were sharing these innovations freely with their alien partners. Unlike the Council, which hoarded technology, to maintain advantage, humanity operated on the principle that everyone benefited when knowledge was shared. This approach was having effects far beyond human space. Council intelligence reports, intercepted by human monitoring stations, showed growing unrest among junior member species. "They're asking questions," reported He Jin during a briefing to Earth's Global Assembly. "Why do humans get to trade freely, while we need Council permission? Why do humans advance so quickly while we stay the same? Why do humans seem happier than us?" The answer to that last question was becoming obvious to anyone who visited human space. Without the constant stress of Council oversight, human colonies were thriving. People worked on projects they believed in rather than assignments handed down by alien bureaucrats. Scientists researched problems they found interesting rather than topics approved by Council committees. More importantly, humans were rediscovering something they had almost forgotten during the brief period of Council negotiations: their own unique identity as a species. "We're not trying to become like other aliens," explained Captain Jinwoo Park during a documentary about human space exploration. "We're trying to become the best version of ourselves." Captain Park commanded one of the new exploration vessels that were mapping unknown regions beyond Council space. His ship, the Soul's Pride, had discovered 3 new star systems and made first contact with 2 previously unknown species. "The Council maps only show about 60% of this galaxy," he said, standing on the bridge of his ship as stars streamed past outside. "There's a whole universe out here that they've never bothered to explore." The species that Captain Park's expeditions encountered were often surprised to meet aliens who didn't demand immediate submission or lengthy negotiations. Humans approached first contact with curiosity rather than conquest, offering trade and friendship rather than protection and control. This was causing problems for the Council that went far beyond trade disputes. Several newly contacted species had refused Council membership after learning about the human alternative. Others had broken off negotiations when they discovered the true terms of junior membership. Chancellor Velthari was facing the worst crisis in Council history, and he knew exactly who to blame. "The humans have become a threat to galactic stability," he declared during a closed session of the Council leadership. "Their reckless independence is inspiring dangerous ideas in other species." "What kind of dangerous ideas?" asked Counselor. "Zethra. The idea that Council membership is optional," the Chancellor replied grimly. "The idea that species can cooperate without our oversight. The idea that our authority can be questioned." The intelligence reports on his desk painted a disturbing picture. The Karathi Syndicate had quietly reduced their military contribution to the Council by 30%, claiming budget constraints. The Zelani Republic had started trading directly with human colonies, bypassing Council trade hubs. 3 minor species had formed a mutual defense pact that excluded Council forces entirely. Most worrying of all, several full Council members were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about resource allocation and voting procedures. "The humans published their legal analysis," reported the Council's chief intelligence officer. "It's been translated into 47 languages and distributed throughout the galaxy. Species that have been junior members for centuries are discovering that their agreements violate the Council's own charter." Chancellor Velthari had read that analysis himself. So Young Kong's work was thorough, logical, and devastating. Worse, it was completely accurate. The Council had been violating its own laws for over 1,000 years, and now everyone knew it. "What do our legal experts recommend?" the Chancellor asked. "They have 3 options," the intelligence officer replied. "First, we could reform the entire Council system to comply with our own charter. Second, we could formally amend the charter to legalize current practices. Third, we could declare the human analysis invalid and suppress its distribution." And the problems with each option? Reform would require giving up most of our authority and wealth. Amending the charter would require a 2/3 vote, including junior members who would never agree. Suppression would prove the humans are right about us being an authoritarian empire. Chancellor Velthari stared out the window of his office at the busy space lanes around the Council station. 2 years ago, this had been the center of galactic civilization, the hub through which all important trade and communication flowed. Now, increasing amounts of galactic commerce were bypassing the Council entirely. Ships traveled directly between human space and alien worlds, carrying goods and ideas that never passed through Council inspection. Scientists shared research through networks that didn't require Council approval. Even military cooperation was happening outside official channels. The worst part was that it was working. The independent networks were more efficient than Council bureaucracy, more innovative than Council oversight, more responsive to the actual needs of different species. "Sir," his aide announced, "we're receiving a formal communication from something called the Independent Species Alliance." "The what?" "It appears to be a new organization. 23 species have signed a founding charter. They're requesting formal diplomatic recognition." Chancellor Velthari felt his heart sink as he read the list of founding members. Most were former junior Council members, but a few were species that had never joined the Council at all. At the top of the list, in 5 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the galaxy looked completely different. Hyojin Park stood at the podium in the Alliance Assembly Hall on Luna Base, looking out at representatives from 41 different species. As humanity's first elected representative to the Independent Species Alliance, she was about to preside over a meeting that would have been impossible just a few years ago. "The Assembly recognizes the representative from the Karathi Syndicate," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems that allowed dozens of alien species to understand each other. Counselor Jathek of the Korathi rose from his seat, his crystalline body reflecting the soft lights of the chamber. "Honored representatives," he said, "I bring news from the former council territories. 3 more species have formally withdrawn from council membership this month, bringing the total to 17. Murmurs of approval came from around the chamber. Each withdrawal meant another species choosing freedom over subjugation, cooperation over control. Furthermore, Jathek continued, the remaining council species have begun internal discussions about reforming their government structure. They are finally acknowledging the flaws that humanity identified 5 years ago. Hyojin had been elected to this position because of her ability to work with different species and find solutions that benefited everyone. As a former trade negotiator, she understood that the best agreements were ones where all parties felt they had gained something valuable. "Thank you, Counselor Jathek," she said. "Representative Subin, could you please update the Assembly on Alliance economic performance?" Subin Jong stood and activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing trade volumes, technological advancement, and resource distribution across Alliance space. The numbers continued to exceed all projections, Subin reported. Alliance gross production has increased 340% since our founding. Innovation rates are up 280%. Most importantly, wealth distribution has become significantly more equitable across all member species. The display showed comparative data between Alliance space and the remaining Council territories. The contrast was striking. Alliance worlds showed steady growth and increasing prosperity for all citizens. Council worlds showed the same pattern. They had maintained for centuries extreme wealth for the founding species, poverty for junior members. "We've also completed the integration of the Nexari refugees," Subin continued. "The 1.2 million Nexari who chose to leave Council space rather than continue supporting the old system have been successfully relocated to new homes in Alliance territory. This was one of the most remarkable developments of the past year. The Nexari Empire, once the most powerful force in the Galactic Council, had split apart when its own people began questioning their government's policies. Nearly a quarter of the Nexari population had chosen to abandon their homeworld and join the Alliance as refugees. Among those refugees was former Chancellor Velthari himself. Hyojin looked toward the back of the chamber, where the former Chancellor sat quietly among the newest Alliance members. It had taken tremendous courage for him to admit that his entire life's work had been based on a fundamentally flawed system. Now, at over 300 years old, he was learning to live in a society based on equality rather than hierarchy. "The Assembly recognizes former Chancellor Velthari," Hyojin said. The purple-skinned alien stood slowly, his forearms showing the careful gestures of someone still learning new customs. When he had ruled the council, his voice had commanded absolute authority. Now he spoke with the humility of someone who had learned from terrible mistakes. "Honored representatives," he began, "I wish to report on the situation in the remaining council territories. The old government structure is collapsing more rapidly than anyone anticipated." He activated his own holographic display, showing the current state of council space. Red zones indicated systems in open rebellion. Yellow zones showed areas where local governments had stopped following council directives. Green zones, representing areas still under full council control, covered less than 30% of the former empire. The junior members who remain in council space are demanding immediate reform, Velthari explained. They have formed a coalition that controls 60% of council military forces and 75% of economic production. The founding species can no longer ignore their demands. "What kind of reforms are they requesting?" asked Representative Kim from the Terran Federation. "Complete restructuring of the government along alliance principles," Velthari replied. "Equal representation, fair resource distribution, and an end to the junior membership system." This was the moment that Jae-Hwan Lim had predicted 5 years ago. The former ambassador, now serving as Earth's elder statesman, had always believed that the Council's system was ultimately unsustainable. By offering a working alternative, humanity had simply accelerated the collapse that was already inevitable. There's more, Velthari continued. The remaining Council leadership has formally requested a meeting with the Alliance. They wish to discuss integration. The chamber fell silent. After 5 years of competition, conflict, and gradual collapse, the Galactic Council was finally ready to admit defeat. Hyojin looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds. Some showed satisfaction at this vindication of their choice to leave the Council. Others showed concern about what integration might mean. A few looked sad at the end of an institution that, despite its flaws, had maintained some form of galactic order for 12,000 years. "What are the Council's specific proposals?" she asked. Velthari's expression was difficult to read, but his body language suggested a mixture of shame and hope. They are requesting to join the Alliance as new members, subject to the same terms and conditions as any other applicant species. The request was both simple and revolutionary. The mighty Galactic Council, which had once demanded that humanity accept junior membership status, was now asking to join humanity's alliance as equals. They understand, Velthari continued, that this would mean abandoning their current government structure entirely. All Council species would need to reform their societies to comply with Alliance principles of equality and cooperation. Representative Min-jae Cho of the Titan colony raised his hand. What about the species that were oppressed under the Council system? How do we ensure justice for centuries of exploitation? This was the question that everyone had been avoiding. The Council had systematically exploited junior member species for over 1,000 years. Trillions of beings had suffered under policies designed to keep them weak and dependent. How could the Alliance forgive such massive historical injustices? The answer came from an unexpected source. Councillor Reshai of the Zalani Republic stood up, her scaled skin shimmering under the chamber lights. "Honored representatives," she said, "I speak for the coalition of former junior members. We have discussed this question extensively among ourselves." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We believe that the best justice is not punishment for past wrongs, but prevention of future ones. The alliance system ensures that no species can exploit another. That is more valuable than any reparations." Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. Many of the alliance members were former council junior members who had suffered under the old system. If they were willing to forgive in the name of building something better, then perhaps healing was possible. "Furthermore," Reshai continued, "we propose that former council leadership species be required to contribute additional resources to help rebuild worlds damaged by centuries of exploitation, not as punishment, but as investment in our shared future." This proposal had been debated extensively in private meetings over the past months. Rather than seeking revenge, the Alliance had chosen to focus on practical solutions that would benefit everyone. Hyojin called for a vote on whether to accept the Council's request for integration negotiations. The result was overwhelming. 39 species voted in favor, with only 2 abstentions and no opposition. "The motion passes," Hyojin announced. "The Alliance will negotiate with the remaining Council species about peaceful integration." 1 month later, the negotiations took place on neutral ground, the same space station where Jae-Hwan Lim had first confronted Chancellor Velthari 5 years earlier. But this time, the roles were reversed. The Alliance delegation was led by Jae-Hwan himself, now gray-haired but still sharp-eyed. Across the table sat the remnants of Council leadership. 12 species who had once ruled the galaxy and now found themselves negotiating for the right to join an organization founded by the primitive humans they had once dismissed. "The terms are non-negotiable," Jae-Hwan said calmly. All species joining the alliance must adopt democratic governments with equal representation for all citizens. All species must contribute fairly to common defense and development projects. All species must share technology and resources according to alliance protocols. The lead council negotiator, a being called Morthek from the Trade Federation, shifted uncomfortably. These terms would require us to completely restructure our societies. Some of our people will resist such changes. That's your choice, Jae-Hwan replied. The alliance doesn't force anyone to join.